Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. It is I don't have to tell you this, but I'm going to put it out there. It is a challenging world. A lot of us moving fast, so much information, lots going on, lots of anxiety. People have problems with self-esteem. Have you thought about a coach that can help you through that? And this guy works with many people in many different areas, and he's here today to give us some insight. Just a fabulous guy, and it's great to have him here. David Andrews is on the program. David, welcome. How are you?
Very good today, Steve. And how are you?
I'm well, thanks. Yeah, you are unique in terms of your educational background, and you kind of later in life you kind of pivot into another direction, and now you're in the coaching direction. Overall, who primarily are you looking to coach with? What type of people do you work with?
Okay. I've answered this question on a few occasions, so I'm happy you asked. My two biggest populations have been like college age kids, and the other one is parents. Parents of adult children. It's a great audience for me because I am a little older and they are a little older, so there's a lot of connection. I'm kind of the tail end of the baby boomer generation. Some of them now have grandchildren. And so a lot of those people have estranged relationships with their children, their adult children, okay? And whether they're a single parent, whether they're still married to the original spouse, whether they're divorced and remarried, and they have children from a couple of different people, whatever it is, but a lot of those relationships are troubling for people, and they're kind of heartbroken. They're kind of sad, or they might be angry. Stuff needs to be cleared. Stuff might need to be forgiven or let go of. But a lot of them need to kind of update their communication skills, their interaction skills, their listening skills. And so over the years, I have really enjoyed working with them, and they've enjoyed working with me. Can I tell you a little story?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So I'll give you an example. I was working with a woman. Her husband had passed away, and she has two sons. One of the sons is a great academic, went to medical school. He's a doctor. He's married to a doctor. They have two kids. The other brother in the family is a little bit learning challenged. He smokes a lot of dope. He's not married. He doesn't have any children. And so there's always conflict between these two brothers. And the mother is always in the middle, right? Being pulled this way and being pulled that way, and trying to create the peace and make it work. So I did a lot of work with her to just help her kind of reframe it, think about it differently, experience it differently, listen differently, respond differently. And when she kind of changed the way she presented herself, her relationship with both of her sons changed. Okay. And as time went on, because of that, their relationship changed. And now the other son is now married, and he's got a job, and he's completely changed his life. So he and his brother are getting on a whole lot better. I mean, that's a very quick overview of it, but that's the kind of thing that can happen when one member of the family decides that they want to take it on, or they want to make some changes, right? And if one person in the relationship changes the way they talk, speak, listen, interact, respond, the other person has no choice but change. Right? So
Sure.
it doesn't have to be that we have an agreement to go for coaching. Right? One person can start, and quite often there's a ripple effect in the family, in the relationship, with whatever. If that helps.
Yeah, and thinking about this, it's a very interesting dynamic when you look at parents of adult children, because I would have to assume the parents look at their children in some regards as still being kids.
Yes. And that's what doesn't work.
That's what doesn't work. Right. And sometimes many times it's heartfelt. I remember, my mom always used to say to me, "Did you eat? you're not getting enough sleep. And, and I just would get used to hearing it. And,
Right.
that's just a small piece of it. But sometimes when it gets larger in terms of the parent of the adult children now talking about how to parent the grandchildren,
Yeah.
all these different dynamics come into play. And it's unique because I don't know anybody that offers that kind of coaching.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, it can be, and many times is, a big challenge. And I do believe too that a lot of conflicts, maybe back in the day of the adult children, come
Yeah.
come to light, in these situations.
Yeah.
Who usually pulls the trigger on that coaching situation?
What pulls the trigger?
Yeah, which is it, the parents of the adult children? Is it the adult children saying, "Hey, this is not really working for all of us here"? And would they reach out to you? That's, question number one. Question number two, how do you get everybody on board in that situation?
Okay, good question. I've done a lot of this one-on-one. Okay. And I guess the newest development for me, Steve, is I'm venturing into a lot more group coaching sessions. So I might have 30 people in a group coaching session. Okay. And it's set up so that it's very non-narrative. In other words, I could sit and do a session with you one-on-one and what happened and who said this and who said what. And we go into the whole history and that's it. But in a lot of the newer coaching models, there are exercises, there are activities. There's a series of questions and reflections that I take my people through. And then, we might do that for, let's say, 40 minutes, 45 minutes. And then we have some reflection and some sharing, like a sharing circle. You don't have to talk if you don't want to, but you can talk if you'd like to. And that really generates a lot of connection. Like a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, I got that. Oh yeah, that happened to me." So there's a lot of identity and a lot of connection and a lot of kind of community building going on when people realize, well, hey, I'm not alone. All kinds of parents have this problem. And instead of hiding it under the carpet and being, feeling ashamed and trying to figure out who to blame, they just take it on in a whole new way.
Wow. I love and you made something very clear, because when I look at the group coaching model, sometimes to me it seems, well, that could be a little impersonal. But what you just said is impactful in that when it's a one-on-one, a lot of times it can feel sort of like therapy because you're going back to, how'd you get here? Instead of, let's move it forward. Here's the action steps. This is what works for a lot of people. And again, the relatability in a group session is fantastic because a lot of times we all feel alone. Like, am I the only one whose parent does that? And then you realize, no, I'm not. Many of them do that.
Yeah, I'm so embarrassed by what my mom does. And then I find out, oh, your mom does it too.
Yes, exactly. Before we get into that model and a little bit more of how you work with people, how did this all come about for you? What's your background? I know it's big on education.
Okay.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
I'd like to share a big piece of that with you. How I was a whole lot younger. I'm a little older than you. You could be my younger brother,
I don't know about that.
So I did a lot of traveling in Western Canada. And I was very interested in Native people and Native culture. So I visited a lot of Native communities, Alberta, British Columbia, and all the way up into Alaska. Okay. This is like 35, 40 years ago. And, my fascination with Native art and totem poles, along the way, I went to a place in Juneau, Alaska. I wanted to see the glacier. Okay. So a Native man, we went to see the glacier, and then we got in his truck and we drove way kind of up the river in a road. And when we got way up the river, there's this place where there's a hot springs in the river. Okay. And because the water is warm, there's algae there. And because there's algae there, there's fish there. And because there's fish there, there are many, many, many eagles. Okay. And as you know, in Native culture, the eagle is a very, very powerful symbol of, God and the spirit and transcendence and strength and all kinds of things. It's, it's on money all over the world, right? And I was given a feather. He gave me an eagle feather.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Okay. Now, I had no clue what the significance was at the time, but in time, I went to an event in a Native community called a talking circle. And the way the talking circle works is, let's say you and I are sitting in the circle, Steve. When the feather comes to you, I just listen. That's all I do. And you share whatever's in your heart. You might talk about what you're struggling with or what the problem is or what you're challenged by, but you just kind of share and you pass the feather to the next person. So the feather goes all around the circle and the holder of the feather is the speaker. And everyone else just listens. They don't interrupt, they don't interject, they don't ask questions. They might nod a little and they just listen. So I was blown away by the power of the circle to just create listening and presence and community and connection. Okay. So when I started teaching a few years later, the very first thing I did was I sat all of my grade 9 boys in a big circle of like 25, 30 people. And I got out the feather and I said, these are the rules, right? When you have the feather, you can talk. If you don't have the feather, keep quiet. And I didn't have to police it. All the kids policed it. Hey, you don't have the feather. Hey, be quiet. Okay. So it just created order and it created community. But here's the really interesting thing. Sometimes a kid would get the feather for the very first time, and they would look out into the circle and see 25 pairs of eyeballs looking at them. And they would start to cry. They would well up inside. They would be overwhelmed by the power of that listening because they had never experienced it in their lifetime before. And it helped them find their voice, and know who they were and get that they had a community, right? So that kind of transformational experience for young people, it is so valuable. It's just so, so valuable. And I see it as a big, big missing in our contemporary society. Wow. So long story short, that's a long story, but I've used the circle in a lot of what I do. So when I launched my business a couple of months ago, I called it Learning Circles.
I love that story. And it just, again, backs up the importance of the group, where I'm not saying I wasn't a fan of it. I just didn't truly understand it because the perception is, and I think for me and many, that in terms of coaching, therapy, whatever it might be, that you can't give that individualized, personalized attention. It's going to be more of a, you could just go look online, but no, there's something with the group, the energy that goes around. And wow, how sad, these ninth graders never realize the power of listening, because they're probably doing this all the time. And there's so much, stimulation, information, and everything going around them that they finally, wow, you stopped me in my tracks. I don't know how to deal with this. So you get emotional.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of young people would really value from that kind of experience. So I've worked with a lot of high school students over the years. I mean, I've held this kind of circle probably once or twice a week, every week for 25 years. Okay. Yeah. And that's all I do is show up and listen.
Right. You're the moderator, basically. Right.
Yeah. I just show up and listen. And I know you get that because you're a great listener.
I don't even know I'm doing it. I'm a learner. That's what I'm doing. I'm learning. And I do that by listening.
Yes.
And when you talk about the ninth graders and teens in general, even more of a reason why a group atmosphere is so important, because they're isolated doing this.
Absolutely. Totally. Oh, Steve, so true. Yeah. Lost. And it's unfortunate. I really feel for them. And because they do this so much, they all have what they call anxiety. They don't have interpersonal skills, communication skills, negotiation skills, being present skills, shut up and listen skills.
Yeah. And isn't it, David, isn't it a oxymoron? It's called social media.
Yeah. Yes.
What happened?
Hang on. Yeah. Yeah. And it's so much about isolation.
It's so much about isolation. Yeah. And that's where, if you look at least here in the States,
Yeah.
there is a mental health crisis among teens right now,
Yeah.
and primarily uh, teen girls, because you have that isolation, then you have the comparison, then you have drama between everybody, and there's no verbalization. It's just this going back and forth, and barbs and jabs are being thrown out at each other, and that lowers your self-esteem, and on and on and on. So once again, I'm going to say it that the group in person or even virtual, but as long as you're together at the same time,
Yeah.
can be so powerful.
And when you're doing this, there's no emotion.
No.
You can hide your tears, you can hide your anger. So there's no emotion. So if you look at the level of emotional intelligence in teenagers, it's at an all-time low at a time in their life when that's what they should be developing.
Exactly. Yeah. And also, when you're doing that, you're hiding behind the keyboard.
Yes.
So you're not truly being yourself. You're being this persona that
Yeah.
you want people to see based on your words, based on photos and everything else.
Yeah.
But it gets us right back to, why this type of coaching is so important. So you work with parents of adult children. Do you
Yes.
work with the two together? Like, would you do sessions with parents and the adult children?
I have not. Like I worked with a lot of college kids. Okay. They're kind of last year of high school, they're going into college. I'll give you an example. This one young man I worked with, super bright, super smart. When I was growing up, they would have called him a troublemaker. Okay. Because he was always getting in trouble at school and in the office, and all kinds of stuff going on. So anyway, I did a lot of work with him to get him to the point where he could successfully graduate without getting kicked out, because he was on the verge of being expelled. And he did graduate, and he did go to university, and at university he did super well. And he eventually he did a degree in counseling psychology. And then he did his master's degree in counseling psychology. And he's not making trouble anymore.
Wow.
but it's just that it's possible. It's some of them, that really high level intelligence, it needs to be channeled and it needs to be focused.
Do you feel, David, that maybe he was a troublemaker because he felt he didn't fit in?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
I always say children misbehave in their highest intelligence. Okay. And we'll talk about that in a whole lot more detail in another time.
As a parent of teenagers, I'm going to sit here and I got to process that. And I will be, driving later and thinking back to scenarios and situations, in my life with them, and think of those at the highest intelligence at that moment. Interesting thought. Wow.
I'll tell you a little story. Okay. When I was way back in the day, when I was teaching high school, I had this kid in my class who had extraordinary kinesthetic intelligence. Okay. And the kinesthetic intelligence is the sport intelligence, right? And the embodied intelligence. So he would come into class walking in on his hands, not his feet. He would fall over into his chair and somehow manage to sit up, and the whole room would give him a big applause. Okay. He would then stand up and fall on the floor and roll over, like a clown. And he had all of these antics that he would do all the time. Okay. And he did it for the attention, and he did it for the fun. And I never had a problem with it. I actually really enjoyed it. But that's just an example of misbehavior in his highest intelligence. Maybe the highest intelligence is musical. So they'll be humming and drumming and singing and, when you don't want it or when you don't need it. But it's just a thing to notice, is that a lot of the misbehavior If you look at the misbehavior, it's a key to what their strengths and what their highest intelligences are.
Thank you for that. I will be observing much more closer.
Yeah.
Time goes on here.
Yeah.
I want to make sure we have a few minutes left. I want to make sure
Okay.
that we get to how you work with people. So they reach out to you, I'm sure, through your website, which is what?
Learningscircles.me.
Okay. And is it a free consult at that point?
I do that a lot with one-on-one, but with group, I don't do that. If somebody wants to call me and talk for 10 minutes about, there's half a dozen courses up there, they can choose a course. Okay. Now, let me just say this about the website. The company who hosts my website, they went down last week and lost 60 websites.
Wow.
So they're all being reconstructed and redeveloped, and mine's almost there, but it's live today and it's working, but there's lots of little things that need to be tweaked, just to let you know and everybody else know that. But you can go there and read a little bit about course descriptions, and you can choose a course that you want. But all of those courses are 8 weeks, and they're all group coaching sessions. They're all set up that way, just for simplicity and ease. If you want to work with me one-on-one, you can still reach me through the same place, or you can email me. It's very simple, david@learningscircles.me.
So
If you set up some one-on-one stuff.
About 2 minutes left.
Okay.
Randomly pick any course that's up there and tell us about it.
Okay. I do a course on personal elevation. Okay. And the personal elevation course, it's just about getting really clear about where you are now in your life and where you want to go. Okay. Or what the blocks are. Now, I know that sounds really familiar. Let me give you a sample here. Hang on. Just let me grab a piece of paper.
Sure.
Of course, okay. So one of the activities, like there's 8 weeks of activity. Okay. I'm going to walk you through the first activity, and if we don't have time, just cut me off. The first question would be, I am strong when, and you fill in the blank. I'm also strong when, and you fill in the blank. And I would give you more time than I'm giving you at the moment. Okay. And it would be, I am strong because, and you fill in the blank. I am also strong because, and I might go through this STEM statement 3 or 4 times. Okay. And then I am strong because I value somebody or something. I'm also strong because I value whatever. So that is a strength exercise, about identifying your strengths and being clear about when you're strong and how you've been strong in the past. And that's kind of a starting point. So that becomes a foundation in the course upon which you build other characteristics and qualities necessary for whatever your chosen journey is.
I appreciate you providing that, even in a very short time, because that gives clarity for anybody that thinks, oh, there's activities. I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if that fits me. Anybody could do that.
Yeah, anybody. Yeah, it's set up that way. You show up with a pen and a paper and you take a few notes. And then after we go through this kind of personal reflection, non-narrative exercise, if you want to share, there you go. Share.
Love it. Yeah. And it does make you think, it's what I view you, David, as you're the mirror. Like you're holding the mirror up to us, and now we're seeing ourselves, and we need to reflect what we're, in this example, what we're strong about, what we value, all those things.
Yes. Yeah.
In other words, anybody can do it.
Yeah, anybody can do it. And the last thing I'll say is that's one of the differences between, I would say, coaching and therapy.
Sure.
Years ago, I made a decision. I do not want to work in the medical paradigm. I just don't. Because a lot of the issues and concerns that my clients have are not medical issues. Right. I don't know how many times I've heard the expression, I'm not sick. There's nothing wrong with me. I don't need to see no therapist. Okay. And they're right. Okay. Because a lot of the issues they don't fit. I mean, if someone needs therapy, that's entirely different. By all means, go ahead. But so many people need a little help, a little coaching, a little guidance.
A little guidance. And that was the word I was thinking of. And you said it right at that point.
Yeah.
And accountability too.
And accountability. And people spend a lot of money on gym memberships. And they look great on the outside. But man, are they suffering on the inside?
Yeah. And a lot of those people also have a trainer, i.e. a coach.
Yes, same thing. Yeah.
Right.
One for the body. All they need is one for the mind, and we're good to go.
Fantastic talking with you today. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Website again, learningcircles.me.
Correct.
Excellent. And it's all there. The courses are up there and you can learn more. I'm looking forward to learning more next time we get a chance to get together.
Okay, great. Let's do it.
Excellent. Thanks again for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Been a pleasure. Have a great day.
And next time, throw the feather my way. I would appreciate that too.
All right. I'll get it all polished up.
I can't believe how large that eagle feather is, which just demonstrates how majestic that bird is.
Yeah, exactly.
Have a great weekend. We'll talk soon.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.